I was looking at my favorite website to find free items being given away when I saw an amazing ad. Someone about 7 miles from me was giving away equipment, one of which was this edger. I was also able to get the other items that were there, but I'll talk more about them when they come up. Right now, I want to see if my efforts paid off or if I picked up someone else's junk. Either way, finding free equipment to fix is always a win in my book. In today's video, we look at this yard machine's edger, and the problem is that I don't know anything about it because I just got it home. That means we need to take a look at it and see if there's anything wrong with it, and maybe see if it starts for us. You never know, sometimes people just give away stuff that still works. Now, that's not as fun as fixing it, but it just means I get to sell it a lot sooner. Now, I'm going to try and repair this edger, but yours might be a little different, so this might not work on yours. So if things aren't working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. Since this is the first video on this edger, I don't know how far I'm going to get into the repair because I do intend on giving it a quick cleaning. In the meantime, I'm also going to talk about a bigger topic which has to do with this style of edger. Why is it that I find so many of these on the curb, often in running condition? And by the condition of this oil, it would appear someone's taken good care of it. Now, it is at the very bottom of the marked area, which means there's just enough oil, but I'd rather see some oil on the dipstick versus none at all. Now, there's no way I can tell by the way the oil looks to know how much time is on this engine, but there is another way to find out how worn out it is, which I'll mention later on. So there is fuel in the tank, but I can't tell if it's still good. To do that, we'll need to drain it out for an inspection. But for right now, I want to try and start the engine, and if it does start and run, then we can skip the inspection and save a lot of time. Unfortunately, it didn't start, but to be honest, I really wasn't expecting it to. I did notice that there's something strange about the safety handle though. First off, the handle hangs down from the handlebar. Now, there's nothing wrong with it this way. However, the biggest issue is that it hangs up. What I mean by that is that when you let go of it, it should move away from the handle and stop the engine, but instead, it stays in position. Now, the lever's job is to release the flywheel brake and also break contact with the ground wire to the coil. That way the engine will start. But with it hanging up, it means the engine won't stop, at least the way it's supposed to when you let go of it. I did try using it without the cable connected to the handle, but it was still doing it. I also applied lube to the pivoting points, but it really didn't help any. The best thing to do would be to remove it and see what's wrong with it. So it appears this end of the handle is bent in a way that it's not supposed to be. I know it's hard to tell with the way that it's already shaped that it's bent more than it should be. I'll just bend it back into shape, reinstall it, and see if it's any better. After replacing it back onto the handle, except this time on top of it, as you can see, it's not hanging up like it was before. I'll then reattach the cable and see if it's going to hang up, but as you can see, it appears to be working much better now. Before I move away from here, I'm going to lubricate the cable with some light lube, not only from the top, but also from the bottom. Now, the lube isn't necessary, but it will keep it working smoothly after years of working in a dirty environment. Now, for some reason, the cable's anchor near the engine is bent, so I'm going to bend it back into the correct position. Before I go any further, I'm going to remove the air filter and see if it needs to be replaced. Then while it's out, I'm going to very quickly clean this edger. I know I'm going to get asked, why would you clean it now instead of finding out if it even runs? And the answer is very simple, because it's my choice to work and diagnose a clean machine. Now, I don't mind getting my hands dirty. In fact, when I was doing this kind of hobby years ago and I wasn't filming it, my hands would get covered in dirt and oil. I never found it to be interfering until I had to clean my hands when I was working on the carb. That means I can avoid having to repeatedly clean my hands if I just gave the equipment a quick cleaning before I started working on it. I would never tell someone they had to clean their equipment before working on it, and of course, if you're getting paid by the job, I wouldn't expect you to use your time to clean something, but in my situation, I do have the luxury of some extra time, so I'm going to clean it. I will say that I'm using a different cleaner than normal, and I probably will not use it again. As you can see, it's not lifting the dirt and oil off the machine quite as well as the other products I've used. Now, this wasn't meant to be a cleaning product review, so I'm not going to mention which cleaner it is, but I will tell you what it is when I do that video. Now, just to let you know, I had to repeatedly apply the cleaner just to get it to work, which is something I shouldn't have to do. I also didn't have the paint sprayer to use either, so I'm just pouring water on the machine to rinse it off. If you choose to use a pressure washer, it would make better use of your time. Just be prepared to get a lot of water everywhere, which might include you as well. Now, depending upon how much water you used and if there was pressure behind it, you might have to use compressed air or a leaf blower to get rid of any extra water to prevent it from rusting in areas that didn't have any paint on it. I'm not sure why, but there were some very oily and greasy areas on this machine. In fact, I had to use old gasoline to clean with because I didn't think the cleaner I was using was going to work on it. Just be very careful when using old gasoline to clean with, and I would also only use it in stubborn areas and not the whole machine. I could have easily used the garden hose for this job as well, but I was concerned with using more water than I needed to when rinsing off the machine. I know I mentioned the use of too much water a lot when doing this, but the reason is very simple. Since I work in the grass, the more water I use, the more saturated the ground gets, which means it'll get quite muddy. This will then limit what I can do in this area for a day or two until it dries enough for me to work on again. After I'm done rinsing off the edger and letting it dry somewhat, I'm going to finally drain the fuel from the tank for an inspection. I'm actually just going to use a siphon to get it out, and I like to start the siphon by using my squirt bottle, but there are other methods to get the fuel out from the tank. After getting out most of the fuel from the tank, I can already tell by the color that this gasoline is very old. If I had to guess, I would say it's at least 2 years old, which is much too old to be used in a small engine, especially when it's not stabilized. Looking inside the fuel tank, I can see about an ounce or so of fuel along with some light discoloration. Now to get the rest of it out, I'm going to use paper towels. If you have the time, another option would be to just leave the edger directly in the sunlight for a few hours. Now after getting the fuel out of the tank, I want to check and see if the engine has a working ignition system, and to do that, I'm going to use a spark checker. To use it, install it on the spark plug, pull the rope, and watch for an orange glow in the tester. So it's very obvious that there was an orange glow in the tester. That means we have a working ignition system. The last thing we need to do is to put some fuel into the carb's throat, pull the rope, and see if it runs for a few seconds. Luckily, the engine started and ran for a second or two, which means there's a good chance this edger works just fine, and they gave it away just to make extra room in the garage. Now, a good way to find out a rough guess as to how much time is on an engine would be to use a compression tester. It's not exact by any means, but it's the best we've got right now. Now, I have to wonder, why do I find so many of these large edgers sitting on the curb? Now, this style of edger ranks third in the category of most items I find for free, right behind trimmers, with the mowers sitting at number 1. The answer might not be all that surprising. These edgers are not for everyone. I think most people buy them thinking it's going to make edging a lot easier, only to find out that using them isn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. What I mean by that is that they're great for driveways and sidewalks, but by the time you get it out and get it ready to use, you could have already gotten the job done by using your string trimmer. The other reason these are given away is because of how cumbersome they are to use. Now, this might fall in the same category as ease of use, but I like to think having a dedicated edger is just another thing you have to maintain in your fleet of tools. This also means that this is going to take up more valuable floor space in your garage or shed. If push comes to shove and you need the space, the edger is going to end up on the curb. So my question is, do you have one of these large edgers? And if you do you use it like you should? Personally, I have too many of these, and the reason is I have a hard time selling them. Most people just don't need them. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.